So we have to put on her leg braces and her arm braces and her hand braces so that her hands, the nails don't dig into her skin because they won't stop. We've had to convince her to keep going. We've had to convince her that there is an end somewhere, that there is going to be a hope and a life for her.
Hello and welcome to the Cannabis Community Insider. I'm your host, Penelope Hamilton. We've just heard from Jennifer Shanley describing how incredibly painful and difficult a full body spasm is for her daughter, Madeline. Madeline's been diagnosed with a very rare disease called stiff person syndrome. The Shanleys are from Rochester, New York, and for years they've been struggling to find and access the medical cannabis they believe holds relief for their daughter. Now join me and let's hear from Jennifer about the determination and journey of hope that they have for their daughter, Madeline. It's always good to see you. Thank you for taking time to talk with me again.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you as well.
Oh. I want to know, how is Madeline doing?
Oh, she's hanging in there. We've had a rough month of a couple of issues with impacted bowel. So we spent some time in the emergency department, about 12 hours a couple of weeks ago. And then we've unfortunately been dealing with an infected toe, which unfortunately for her body sends her body into muscular spasms with any type of infection. So that's been a bit of a challenge. But she's hanging in there. She's fighting very hard against really difficult circumstances and obstacles and health challenges.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, though. But overall, I mean, I'm glad you were able to have time to come and talk with us. Why don't you explain a little bit about what Madeline's diagnosis is, what is going on, and who your beautiful daughter is?
My wonderful daughter, Madeline, is 22 years old. She's an incredibly bright, kind, compassionate person. She started to become ill about 3.5 years ago. Through a long, difficult time trying to figure out what was going on with her, we discovered that she has a number of challenges. Two of the main ones are something called stiff person syndrome, which is a rare autoimmune neurological muscular disorder that causes muscular spasms throughout a person's body that cause a painful state, almost like paralysis, but really where the muscles are sort of tearing at each other, competing with each other. Complicated by a number of nutritional deficiencies, as her body was unable to absorb nutrients. So she also has a severe B12 deficiency that has a huge impact on her. She is 100% bedbound and has been for almost 4 years now. She travels to the doctors via stretcher and ambulance. And we hope someday that she will be able to sit in a wheelchair.
And Madeline was, fine before this?
So looking back, we now see that there were probably signs throughout her childhood that she was having some of these challenges, but they were not enough of red flags for us to know that something extreme was going on. And she was I would say a typical college freshman, but not really. She was a driven college freshman. She's a young woman who graduated from the Young Entrepreneurs Academy at the University of Rochester when she was 11 years old and started her own business when she was 12. She had done internships in local nonprofits and businesses during her high school years, and was starting out as a freshman studying business management, and she was an honors college student when all of this really came to fruition, when everything started to fail on her body.
She was quite the leader and, entrepreneur, it sounds like. So I know this is so
She's an incredible person. And we look forward to her having a voice in
yeah.
the community someday.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet her when COVID calms down enough to be safe
That's
enough for us all to do that. So had you even ever heard of the stiff person syndrome before yourselves?
No, we had not heard of it. We were really just going back and forth to doctors trying to figure out what was happening with her. Often it wasn't happening while we were in a doctor's office. So there was always the suspicion that maybe we were exaggerating what was happening, or maybe it was all in her head. So that really blocked us from getting a lot of help very early. And when Madeline was fading pretty quickly, we started doing our own research into what might be happening. We discovered that this could possibly have been a diagnosis, and there was a center for treatment at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. So the plan was to try and rent a van with a mattress in the back and throw her in and take her to Johns Hopkins from upstate New York. However, we were able to find an ambulance that we were able to pay about $5,000 to drive her to Johns Hopkins to get her seen by Dr. Scott Newsom at the Stiff Person Center at Johns Hopkins.
Oh, Jen.
So she spent 2 months at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore in the summer of 2019.
Well, you and your husband learned to be advocates very quickly.
Yes. Well, I do have some experience with advocacy. My younger son has autism. And so I was an advocate for him throughout his schooling and growing up. I, served on a number of advocacy committees, on, the Committee for Special Education. I created programs, the Parents and Teachers, the Special Education Group in Greece, New York. I created that with the Director of Special Education and really tried to find opportunities to enhance offerings for our kids and make sure all their needs were being met.
I think you're one of the most courageous women I have ever met.
Thanks. Wait till you read my book someday.
Oh, get going.
You think this is nothing. This is not the most difficult I've had to encounter.
Really?
Really.
This is another story for another day.
Another story for another day that you and I will. Yeah.
Oh. So once you got this diagnosis, what were they saying for treatment and prognosis? What were you supposed to do?
When we got the diagnosis, basically they sent us back home, and then COVID exploded in our community. So we were really even more separated from our medical providers. Madeline was getting worse and worse. And in August of 2020, the decision was made that it was probably time to put her into hospice. So we began that process of working with our therapists, working with her, and starting to get her prepared for hospice. And we had a nurse come to our house to come and help us get ready for that process. And she was the one who discovered the very treatable nutritional, she was the one who discovered the very treatable nutritional deficiency that had been killing Madeline. And once we were able to start her on those daily injections, she was no longer dying and she no longer had to go into hospice. And now we are dealing with, obviously, the stiff person syndrome and the residual neurological damage from having had a nutritional deficiency for so long.
And that was what, just B12? And she was anemic, right? From B12?
She's anemic, and her body is incapable of digesting B12. So it didn't matter how many B12 and rich foods, or it didn't matter how many supplements she was given. It would show up in her system as having B12, but when you tested the active B12, it presented a very dangerous story.
And a very, very simple way to treat.
Very simple way to treat. This illness was solved in the 1920s. There is no reason that a young person should have suffered for this long with this illness.
Well, thanks to that nurse, I'm glad she got a little relief, but you said there's permanent damage though from, or we don't know, maybe from.
We don't know, and we have hope. She is a young woman. She is pretty healthy. We have been able to avoid bed sores, which is a real challenge when you have someone who is 100% bedbound and locked in spasms. So we have a lot of optimism that her body can heal given the correct support and nutrients and foods and medications that will support and help her to heal. We have a tremendous amount of hope for her. The difference between today and August of 2020, when we were putting her in hospice, is incredible. It's incredible. So we do have a lot of hope.
I know this is hard for you to talk about, and I know it's hard for me to ask because I do know, because we've met before. What is it like when your daughter is going through one of these flares, or when this happens, and how often, and what does it look like, this stiff person syndrome? Because most people, I don't think, have ever heard of this.
Yes. So it's pretty scary. What happens is my daughter's system is set off by any kind of sensory information. So it could be touch, could be smell, light, sound. And it will start a cascade of muscular spasms throughout her body. And so when you move your finger this way, there's a muscle that moves it this way, and there's a muscle that moves it back. Well, what happens to Madeline is both of those muscles start pulling in the opposite direction at the same time, with the strength of an athlete, a tremendous athlete. They just pull so they're tearing. So it seems like paralysis. You're stuck in this spot, but you're not really. If anything moves that finger, well, you're tearing at both of those muscles. So, and that happens throughout her entire body. And that includes interior and internal and external muscles that this happens to. So her bladder will spasm shut, or her sphincters in her digestive tract will spasm shut for days. And it's pretty difficult. So unfortunately, with stiff person syndrome, we don't seem to have settled into a lull where we can predict how often it will happen, when it will happen, and how long it will last. So on a good day, she may have 2 spasms throughout the day that maybe encompass her face and her arms and legs. And they may last for a half an hour or 45 minutes. And we're thrilled that she's come out of it. And then her body is sort of recovering from being in that state. On a bad time, they can last for days. We've had her feet were turned around backwards for 11 months.
11 months?
Solid. They didn't loosen up. 11 months. Oh. And not, it doesn't stop when she goes to sleep. It continues while she's asleep. It's just all the time. So that was very difficult, very painful for her. But this has left her alone. We couldn't hug her for years. We couldn't touch her to calm her. She just sat there and cried. So the really difficult thing, some of the things you don't know that you learn when you become the parent of someone who's very, very ill. I couldn't cry the way I needed to cry because I sound just like her.
Mm.
And every time I cried, I would just hear her crying. So I used to go out into the yard and I put my headphones in and I just sob and cry with the music blasting in my ears so that I couldn't hear, because it was just traumatizing to hear the same sounds. So when she gets into a spasm, we try and calm her down. We have to put on her braces to secure, so her we don't tear any muscles or break any bones. So we have to put on her leg braces and her arm braces and her hand braces so that her hands, the nails don't dig into her skin, because they won't stop. They'll just keep going. We have to try and keep her calm. We reposition her body. We watch her. We tell her that it's going to go away, that she'll get through it, because when it starts to take over her face and it makes it so she can't speak, she can't open her eyes, so we can't even put medication in her mouth. It's very difficult. It's a real challenge. And we've had to convince her to keep going. We've had to convince her that there is an end somewhere, that there is going to be a hope and a life for her. But it's changed us completely. It's changed who we are. I don't think you can watch your child go through that for as long as we have, and really very much alone, because of everything going on with COVID and just the nature of an illness, what it does, how much it keeps you alone. I don't think you can go through that without it changing who you are. So it's very difficult for her. She feels very much abandoned by the medical community.
So there's no medicine that they sent you away with that could just stop these spasms or stop her pain?
No, so she did IVIG for months, which is an immunoglobulin therapy. But that was prior to us being made aware that she had this B12 deficiency. So we're unsure which part of this illness we were fighting. So no, there was nothing that we could do to help her for the pain. When we were at Johns Hopkins, they tried ketamine for 11 days and it did nothing. She never tried any, what are they called? What are the medications that they're always so concerned about now?
Opioids?
Yes.
Opioids.
So she never tried any opioid type medication, partially because they told us with this type of pain, it doesn't help. And we didn't want to add in something that could be detrimental and habit forming and mess with her system more. So they didn't send us home with anything there. Prior to going to Johns Hopkins, we did go to see a doctor at the Cleveland Clinic. And he had said to us, again, we didn't have any diagnoses at the time. And he said, maybe you'll have a disease named after you someday. And which, certainly was not uplifting to us. And he said, here's a prescription for medical marijuana. Have a nice life. And he sent us on our way home. And that, we were still at that time, still trying to find, medical diagnosis and get access to medical care. But at the same time, we did start looking into medical cannabis and how it might be able to help her. And that was sort of our first look into it. So we were utilizing the dispensaries to try and help us to find medical cannabis that could meet Madeline's very difficult needs. When we first started, she was still in a wheelchair and was able to go with us to the dispensaries. So the pharmacists knew her quite well, and they were so incredibly caring and really trying to help us. But they did express to us that they felt like what was available currently in the pharmacy was not going to have enough of the different types of medicines that the cannabis plant can provide to be helpful to Madeline. And they really encouraged us to look into the legacy market. Yeah, I don't want to get anyone in trouble because they were so helpful to us, but
Yeah.
That's kind of the truth of it. But we didn't, we stuck with the pharmacy products, and we were oftentimes the guinea pigs. Madeline was a guinea pig for a lot of their products, like she cannot ingest cannabis through smoking it. It's it's too difficult on her body and her lungs, so she would have to do tinctures or things like that. And so they would try and help us. Sometimes her mouth is frozen and we can't get anything in her mouth, and we're struggling against a clenched jaw. And so they tried the rectal suppository cannabis, and they said, we've got this new one in, we really think it might be helpful, give us a try and let us know it helps. It was really detrimental to her system and really burned her digestive system pretty badly, and so much so that they took it right off the shelves. And yeah, so as much as the information as they have given us, we have also tried to provide them with feedback and information as we could. So we were kind of lost looking for cannabis products that might help. We know that there could be some tremendous help, but we didn't have access to things that could help, and didn't have access to a broad number of things with different medicinal properties. Around this time, this was in April of 2019, Madeline went into her first full body spasm that lasted for an extended period of time, and that was 5 days. We had never seen anything like that before. My husband had left his job and was staying home. But at this particular time, April, when her first full body spasm that lasted 5 days happened, we were just openly walking around the house weeping. We didn't know what we were going to do. We couldn't believe that here we were in this little suburban community, and we were just suffering like this alone. So it had gotten to the point where we had no food in the house anymore, and I said to my husband, you need to go to the grocery store, we need food. And he went to the grocery store, and I was just walking around the house, laying on the floor crying, getting up, checking on Madeline, going back down, laying on the floor and crying and trying to get through. And I just remembered that a friend had said to me something similar that the pharmacist had told me, which is, some of the products that you get outside of the pharmacy may be more beneficial. At that point, there were a lot of CBD stores that had opened in the area. And I had gotten a bottle of CBD oil, and I, was thinking, oh, maybe, it might be something that could be helpful at some point. But I, tried it myself and didn't really see a positive effect from it. But I thought, what do we have to lose? Let's see if it works. So we gave her Just I gave her a dropper of some I'm sorry, I gave her a dropper of the CBD oil, and within 45 minutes, her entire body freed up like it hadn't in months. No muscle spasms anywhere. We were in shock. We, I have a picture. I think I've shared it with you of her holding her leg up in the air and smiling. And I sent it to my husband, who was at the store, and he said, what is going on? What, I don't understand. He thought maybe it was from before. And I told him what had happened, and we were overjoyed. We thought we'd found the solution. We thought it was over. We thought our difficult journey was over, but we weren't able to reproduce that again. We didn't know what we were doing as far as dosages and times to take it and other things that might supplement to make it happen. So we weren't able to recreate it again, but it showed us, it opened that door to show us that there is a possibility there, that there is a way that this can help her. We just need to find out the correct strain, the correct dosage, the correct timing, all of the things, what her body needs. We just needed to find that. Again, we were not able to concentrate on that portion of her medical journey as we were still trying to figure out why she was getting worse and worse and worse. And we were very much focused on that. But that showed us, and we, from that point on, we knew that we could find help with cannabis where we had found none with these other pharmaceutical products. So Madeline now does take cannabis occasionally for pain, but we don't really have different things to choose from that might address her muscular spasms, might address the fact that her digestive system is having difficulties and might make her less nauseous and able to eat. We don't have, all the different areas that cannabis could help her. When she's unable to sleep, we could help her with something that could help provide a calming environment so she could naturally fall asleep. So there are so many ways that I know that this natural plant from the garden can help my daughter. And I just need to be able to access the products, the information, the ability to control where it's coming from, how it's grown, how it's produced, all the things that I can make sure, so I can say with certainty what is working, how and why, and I can reproduce it and continue to use it as a medication for her to heal.
Wow. So you found hope. I mean, it really gave you some light at the end of that tunnel.
It gave us tremendous hope, and it has been the most hopeful thing that we have had.
I want to give some background for anybody who's watching and listening. So you went and got a medical card and registered in New York State, correct?
That's correct.
And at that time, did we even have whole flower at our dispensaries?
No.
Just so people understand, New York State has a medical program, but it was very limited and it was very restricted. And it still is developing. We are now legal for adult use in New York State, but that doesn't mean that overnight that products are available or that stores are around. So we didn't have and don't have what we call whole plant medicine. We do have whole flower now that you can go in and buy, but again, it's very limited, depends on where you live and where you're shopping. And we don't have the variety. Some of you that are maybe used to a huge dispensary where there's all different kinds of names, we weren't even allowed to have those strain names on our packaging. we weren't allowed to have the testing that would show terpenes, flavonoids, different cannabinoids. Ours were mainly just isolates, and broad spectrum products, a lot of ratios that were just mixed. And we were just told, here, buy a 3-to-1, buy a 2-to-1, or a 1-to-1. So that might help you understand why, Jen's saying we know there's more out there, but we can't get access. So yeah, this program is opening, it's widening, and we hope to have those products. But this is what we've been fighting for in New York State, is for families like you, Jen, who need that whole plant, the entourage effect, all the different phytochemicals that work together. And you need that testing so that you can sit there and say, this one was high in myrcene, maybe that's the part that's helping, and then you can work on that.
Right. And to be able to share that with others in the community so that we can build a breadth of knowledge for people, so that so people aren't recreating the wheel, so that they're able to come together as a community with this knowledge and utilize it to help themselves or help others.
And to move forward, Jen, I know you are a master gardener. You have a love for gardening.
I'm not a master gardener, though. I would love to have it. That's a specific designation that you actually have to pass a number of tests.
Yeah, so in New York, we do have the Cornell Cooperative Extension where you can become a master gardener, but
yes.
I'm calling Jen a master gardener.
I love gardening. I really do. I love to garden. It's where I get my calmness and my zen, and I've been a gardener for many years. Enjoy it. Luckily my husband and I really truly enjoy it.
And thankfully, with our legislation in New York, you are going to be able to grow cannabis at home for your daughter, and actually all the adults 21 and over will be able to in New York at some point, but the medical patients will be able to grow sooner. And as of recording this, it should hopefully be this spring. But Jen, I want you to tell us, with the regulations that you know about, what do you see as being a problem already for you, and your family, with how they're saying you can and can't grow?
Sure. Well, gosh, I think I'll start sort of at the top and move backwards. If we're talking about limiting the number of mature plants that someone can grow to 3, if you're able to get 3 fully viable, plants of separate varieties, that would be great. But unfortunately, most people need to have one mature flowering plant and another plant that is the mother plant for creating clones, so that you can continue with the same exact strain, so that you're keeping it specific and consistent. This is medicine. This is important that we do everything consistently. So I think that number one, the 3 plants, really mature plants, gives you the ability to have one strain, because you really have a mother plant and then 2 that are providing the medication, and then you're cycling through as those. That's not a reality for people who are suffering from medical conditions. That would be as if we would go to a pharmacy when you're having any kind of condition and you could only pick one medicine. You have a cold, one medicine, that's it. That doesn't make any sense. People need to have medication that helps them for the various parts of their illnesses. For Madeline, for muscular spasms, which would be separate, most likely, from a medication that would help her with her migraine that she has had for almost 4 years now. It might be separate from a medication that would help her be able to eat and tolerate food. Might be separate from a medication that would help her to sleep, or a medication that might actually help her to be more awake and more aware during the day, which might be different from a medication that helps with pain. So we really shouldn't limit are especially so ill medical patients to just one medication. That doesn't seem like an appropriate way to go. And so that's a problem that I have with the number of mature plants. The problem that I have with the number of immature plants is it just doesn't follow the truths about gardening. And the truths about gardening are that, especially if you're gardening something that you're going to be using as medication or food, you always want to pick the appropriate healthy plants. You don't want to have just 3 baby plants that you have to take into adulthood, even if they are not the appropriate healthy plants. That just doesn't make any sense. So, starting from seed, you will lose some of your seedlings. Switching to another growing medium as they start to grow, or as you're getting clones from a plant to grow, you will lose a certain percentage of those as well. It's just gardening. Every gardener knows,
right?
You can love your plants. You can love your plants as much as you do, and do everything right and still lose plants. 20% of your plants will fail. It's just a gardener's law. Then there's also the problem of pests. And, here in New York State, we have all sorts of little bugs and creatures and things. We're doing this for medicine. We cannot have an interruption in this medication stream just because we have these sort of arbitrary limits that don't take into account the realities of being a gardener. And this is coming from someone, and I do fancy myself a gardener. I really do. This is coming from someone who really does. If you're talking about other people who may not have as much skill, they're going to even have more loss.
Not that there was medicine that you were finding that was working for you at the dispensaries, but how much were you spending a month as it was, just even trying things?
Oh, at the dispensary, I think we were spending, I have to look at my receipts, but I think at one point we were spending $2,000 a month.
That's just not reality for
No,
anybody. I mean, I don't know anybody who just has an extra 2,000 a month
we didn't.
put out
I
there
mean,
for trial and error.
it completely depleted our savings. I mean, we couldn't deny her the one medication that was at least having a small effect on her pain. We couldn't deny her that. And so we just had to do it. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things that depleted our finances.
So that home cultivation piece is what's really going to help you save and be able to afford her medicine as well, and keep trying so that you can try to find what it is, what cannabinoid or combination that can help Madeline.
Exactly. We have hope. And it's so strange being in the medical, being in a medical experience, having gone through this medical experience and really feeling like we are at the whims of whatever medical professionals or hospitals or doctors we encounter. We are completely at their whims. And to take that back into our own control and have, myself and my husband, 2 educated adults who are very experienced in gardening, take this and be able to try and attempt to ourselves have control over saving our daughter's life and giving her a future is really incredible. That's a really incredible gift.
Very empowering, and it's the best gift you can ever give her, Jen, tell me, what can I do to help? What can anybody who's listening or watching do to help you? Is there anything?
I would like people to learn more about, medical cannabis and the opportunities that it has to make changes for people for the better. I would love if anyone has information about things specifically that have worked for them, if they are in a similar situation, if they are dealing with horrific muscle spasms like we are, and they found something that helps with those muscle spasms. We would love to hear it, because every bit of information that we can gather will save us time and money and heartache for my daughter. Every little bit will help us give her a future. So knowledge and speaking about this, I think it's really important to take back the conversation about cannabis away from this recreational sort of stereotypical look at what it is, into what the real potential is for it in the community, for people who are looking to use it as a medicinal therapy. And I think that conversation needs to start being the primary conversation that we have about cannabis.
Thank you, Jen. Well said.
Of course.